What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So as we've been watching Microsoft acquire these different studios and even large publishers like Activision, we have been kind of wondering if they'd be able to manage all of this. Well, Microsoft released a bunch of information as to how they are changing and altering some of their leadership positions that I assume to set themselves up going forward, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about some massive sales for Nintendo when it comes to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, especially in Japan. And we also have some information from Ubisoft around some of their upcoming games, which, yes, does include Skull and Bones and brings us to a fun game we'll play towards the end of the show. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Alan Wake 2. It is out actually today, and I'm pretty excited to check this one out. It's been a while, obviously, since the first Alan Wake came out, although we had that Alan Wake remaster and some DLC and other things kind of thrown in there. But reviews did go live, and we can see this over on Metacritic, starting with the PlayStation 5 version. That one is currently sitting at an 88, and then on PC, currently sitting at a 92. And these are the two most reviewed platforms. We don't have enough in necessarily for Xbox to turn in a score currently on Metacritic, but I mean, if we just take a look at some of the publications here, like Push Square saying, like a mystery once thought solved, Alan Wake 2 reopens the case for what's possible in its genre. It's a delight to relive classic horror titles through modern mistakes, but what Remedy has cooked up here is something special. Now, I do have to go all the way down the opposite end of the spectrum. We have Metro giving it a 60, saying a peculiar sequel that at times seems to be purposely undermining the best elements of the original, but it still gets just enough right to please both existing fans and potential newcomers. In fact, the biggest bit of praise I've seen for this game are the graphics themselves. So if you have a nice PC, seems like you'll get quite a bit out of this game, but otherwise has performance mode, for example, on PlayStation and Xbox. So we'll see how all of that turns out, but I will be picking this game up today and checking it out since I'm actually right at the end of Spider-Man 2, so I'll wrap that up and then immediately go into Alan Wake 2. 2023 just keeps rolling. Also, we did have an announcement for a $200 Nintendo Switch cartridge. Technically, it's a cartridge with a collection of 12 different games, and you can see the list here. This is the Annapurna Interactive Deluxe Limited Edition Collection, coming in at $200. There's only 2,500 copies available. You can see the list of games here: Solar Ash, Donut Country, I Am Dead, If Found, The Pathless. Some of these games just have not ever come out physically at all. It is due to ship in Q4 2023, so it should be any time. Now, it was just sort of weird to see that price tag next to a single Switch cartridge, but I guess you could look at that and argue that the value is there with the 12 different games from Annapurna being available all on the cartridge. So, hey, if you're a big fan of Annapurna titles, you can check it out over on I Am 8-Bit. Again, they're doing pre-orders, and apparently 2,500 copies will be made. Oh, and here's a bit of news out of left field. It appears that Batman Arkham Knight has got an update. In fact, there's a new suit, but it's specific to the Epic Game Store, at least for now. We can see this posted up with images of it. This was from Geek Vibes Nation. It says the Batman suit, so from the most recent movie with Robert Pattinson, is available for Arkham Knight. And I mean, it looks pretty cool. And it's just odd because this is the first update we've had in a long time for Arkham Knight, again, specific to Epic Game Store on PC, and there's really been no mention of this by Rocksteady or WB. Maybe it got out a bit early on PC or something. Maybe it has to do with the collection that's coming up at the end of this year on the Switch. Could be part of it, and they just said, hey, throw it on Epic Game Store because they paid for it. Hard to say, but there you go. If you want to use the suit from the Batman, it's technically available on PC for Arkham Knight. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft and some of their leadership changes and promotions actually going out. And this is definitely something that they're doing to set themselves up going forward now that they have Activision Blizzard and ZeniMax with Bethesda under their belt. And this is, if you look at the amount of studios and developers that they have. There's a lot going on here, so it makes sense why they'd want to structure this out in a certain way. And in fact, now it even sounds like ZeniMax and Bethesda are going to be getting even closer to Xbox's just game studios in general, whereas before they were acting much more like a separate or independent entity. While they're still kind of going to be doing that, it does seem that they're just getting closer in general when it comes to communication, chain of command, all of that. Well, we do have this diagram here that shows it a bit more clearly. You're going to recognize some of the names on here. Phil Spencer, obviously being at the top, is one you'll recognize right away. But then also Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and Bobby Kotick, I'm sure, stand out as well. And we can go over those as, again, there's a lot going on here. Phil Spencer put out an internal memo that just happened to get out to The Verge. I wonder how that one happened. But we can see for Matt Booty, he says, great games are fundamental to everything we do. We believe that an expanded gaming content organization, one that enables Xbox Game Studios and ZeniMax development studios to collaborate effectively together, will empower those world-class studios to do their best work in growing our portfolio of games players love. Matt Booty will lead this expanded organization as president, game content, and studios. Goes on to say that Jamie Letter, who's the president and CEO, will be reporting to Matt, and all ZeniMax development studios and ZeniMax central services teams will continue reporting to Jamie to maintain and optimize current content development and production cycles. Also, to deepen our partnership and accelerate mutual learning, a number of ZeniMax leaders will now report to those Microsoft leaders with whom their work most closely aligns. So it is interesting, I guess at this point, to see now that Starfield is out there, Redfall is done and out, that they would be moving to work more closely with just Xbox in general and their Xbox game studios. So it makes sense when you consider the fact that yes, Microsoft owns Bethesda and ZeniMax. So yeah, maybe they want to collaborate more back and forth. Could be with intellectual properties, could just be with their technical teams helping out Bethesda and ZeniMax and vice versa. But then he also talked about just the Xbox hardware, the platform, and Sarah Bond. He says, with our innovative devices, products, services, and our global community, Xbox is the primary way we connect games and their creators with players around the world. These experiences are as foundational as the games themselves, whether they are our first-party games or third-party games. To manage the platform of today and build the platform of tomorrow, we are bringing together the teams that will make this possible. Sarah Bond will lead this team as president of Xbox, bringing together devices, player, and creator experiences, platform engineering, strategy, business planning, data and analytics, and business development. So this is really big, obviously, for Sarah Bond. And now that she's president of Xbox and Phil Spencer being CEO of Microsoft Gaming, it is interesting to follow along with her career as she has been moving up like the corporate ladder in Microsoft pretty quickly. And it does seem like maybe she's being positioned to take over for Phil Spencer's position after he's done and moved on and retired. And I mean, we've seen her quite a bit in some of the different presentations or different events. She's definitely making moves within Microsoft. So, hey, good to see for Sarah Bond there, now president of Xbox. And again, this just kind of sets them up. I still think Microsoft is going to be making other acquisitions in gaming probably the next year or two. I mean, Activision Blizzard stuff, that's wrapped up. Bobby Kotick is on his way out apparently at the end of 2023, so I'm sure we'll be revisiting this chart once again and hearing about how they're going to integrate Activision Blizzard a bit more into Xbox and Microsoft Studios, similar to what's happening with ZeniMax and Bethesda, and who takes over for Bobby Kotick at that point, who I assume will then just be reporting to Matt Booty anyway. So again, setting themselves up for the future as they're looking to have one big or semi-big release every single quarter each calendar year. So mostly they're just setting the groundwork so they can hopefully get things a bit more organized and have production on time going forward. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, as it looks like it's absolutely crushing sales charts right now. Of course, in Japan, we do get the hard numbers that we can compare to other Mario games, but we also got a message from Nintendo of Europe over on Twitter, which we can see here, where they say, "Wowie zowie, in its first 3 days on sale, Super Mario Bros. Wonder has become the fastest selling Super Mario game ever in Europe. A huge thanks to everyone who helped make this a wonderful launch." So I mean, again, it's been rolling along. Of course, we've seen all the reviews. They posted a bunch of scores there, but yeah, go figure. A Mario game selling really well on the platform, but we can also take a look at the Famitsu sales charts. These, of course, track sales week to week in Japan. And we can see at the top, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, 638,634 copies. Remember, these are all physical over-the-counter sales, so these do not count digital sales, which tells me this could be right up against 1 million copies potentially. We can do some comparisons to previous Mario games, and if you line it up like for each launch, it's up there with New Super Mario Brothers, New Super Mario Brothers on the DS, the Wii. Those are the only ones that have outsold it. And remember, those were only physical copies, whereas with Mario Brothers Wonder, I'm sure there's plenty of people who just decided, I'll just buy it on the eShop and download it. But that does mean that Super Mario Brothers Wonder is the fastest selling Mario game on the Switch completely. Yes, that places it above Super Mario Odyssey. Now, again, these are launch week numbers, so Super Mario Odyssey was dealing with a much smaller install size with the Switch when it came out back in 2017. Nonetheless, though, for a 2D Mario game like that, it's impressive stuff. I know people look at 2D Mario versus 3D Mario and tend to gravitate more towards 3D Mario when it comes to the sales and how important they are, but hey, 2D Mario goes back to the roots, and I think there are many people out there who even prefer 2D Mario games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder over some of the 3D ones. Anyway, back to the charts here. At number 2, we have Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5, 77,348. Again, it's worth pointing out with the difference between digital and physical, I think especially with the PS5, it's probably half and half, I figure now. And if you compare it to previous Spider-Man games, when Marvel Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4 came out, 132,520. We also, of course, had digital sales then too, but I think this is right in line for the install size that it's selling on for the PS5, especially when you compare it to something like Miles Morales being significantly less at 18,640 copies on the PS5 when it first came out. From there, we have Jinsai Game for Nintendo Switch, that coming in 54,264. Pikmin 4 continues to roll along, 10,208. It is moving towards that 1 million mark very, very steadily. It'll get there. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of course. Then we have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that at 5,206. That has sold more than 5 million copies. What a shame. Then we have Minecraft, Detective Pikachu Returns, Sonic Superstars at 4,128 copies. This looks bad, I understand. Let me go to 10 though first. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 3,615. Okay, back to Sonic Superstars at 4,128. Looking at Sonic in general with its performance in Japan, it's not great. Sonic is just not sold in Japan. Remember, that's just the Switch version. There's I assume a PlayStation version somewhere out there. Maybe you have to go way down the charts or something. But with just the top 10 that we have here, yeah, 4,128. You compare it to Sonic Forces, for example, that technically sold more. Again, that's, I guess, a 3D Sonic, so there you go. Sonic Frontiers, there was 26,000 copies on the Switch, 11,000 copies on the PS5, 9,000 on the You get what I mean, though? Sonic doesn't exactly explode out of the gate or do well on the sales charts in Japan. And then moving over to the hardware, 62,250 for the Switch that led the way. I thought there'd be a bit more of a hardware bump for the system with Mario Bros. Wonder, but I really think we are getting to the position where just everyone has a Switch, and it's hard to see those big jumps for hardware in Japan. Even with large releases like this, it's what, 2 million systems, I think, off of the DS, which would in turn make it the best-selling system ever in Japan. The PlayStation 5, 9,844. That dropped quite a bit there from last week. The Xbox Series actually climbed a bit, 2,748. The PS4, 1,437. And somehow, 27 3DS systems still sold. But overall, some impressive numbers here for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And I feel like Nintendo will make an announcement for global sales just to throw that number out there. Although, I guess technically they could wait a week and a half and do it just before their 6-month briefing for investors to have a pretty big impact and get, I'm sure, investors all excited about how well the game's doing going into the holidays, all the corporate stuff, you get that. But yeah, go figure. Turns out Super Mario Brothers on the Switch is really popular. Next up, let's talk about some sad news for Star Ocean Second Story R, as we had a picture of the front cover art shown, and there's an unfortunate blue box on the Switch version. We can see it here. It appears somebody did get their copy early, and yeah, download required. So this is unfortunate. It's so deflating to see this, by the way, on the Switch, because the idea is you get the cartridge, you pop it in, and it just works. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to download it. Maybe a day one patch. It's a couple hundred megabytes or something, but you don't have to download the game. In this case, though, it feels like they maybe did a 4 GB cartridge and then just left the rest of the game up to be downloaded, which if you look at the page for this over on Nintendo's website, the game comes in at 11.9 gigabytes, so you're probably downloading 7 to 8 gigabytes, even if you have the cartridge. So to me, this is still the big thing that Nintendo needs to figure out going into next generation, because this just is, it really goes against the idea of collecting physical copies of games for a system if you don't get it all on the cartridge anyway. I was excited for the idea of Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 1 on the Switch until just more information was coming out about frame rate, and then, oh yeah, it's like 2 gigabytes on the cartridge, the rest you have to download. It's like 30 gigabytes you download, something ridiculous. I usually pass on these releases when that blue box is there. Maybe there will be an international version that's released overseas and you can import it, and maybe it has like English language options and that has everything on the cartridge. But I guess in this case, Square Enix didn't want to spring for a 16 gigabyte cartridge. But going into next generation, with fidelity continue to go up and Nintendo, I guess, targeting 4K, our file size is going to get smaller, because I figure they would just get larger, which, how do we work out the situation with cartridges if publishers won't even spring for 16 gigabyte carts? What happens when games are 30 to 40 gigabytes on Nintendo's new system because of all the extra graphical fidelity and textures and uncompressed audio and everything that's trying to be done there? Nintendo, they got their work cut out for them with this one, especially if they want to continue holding on to physical media, like I'm sure many of us would like them to. Well, they got to work out that situation with cartridges. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Ubisoft and their recent financial report, because while they did talk about some of the numbers, they also gave us an idea as to what we can look forward to in 2024, and that brings us to a fun game we can play then going into next year. But first, we can take a look at some of their financials here. Turns out Ubisoft did better than they were expecting by a wide margin. And they have a few reasons why. Assassin's Creed Mirage, according to them, is under successful launches, so good news there. Solid launch with week 1 number of players in line with Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey. So Valhalla, we know, is like on another level, but still Odyssey, Origins, those are some of the big-time Assassin's Creed games, whereas we know Mirage was kind of shown and talked about as like a smaller game. So good to see in terms of player counts. It's right up there with them. Crew Motorfest, interestingly enough, they said strong player reception with the franchise record unit sell-through. Because I feel like a lot of people, I saw this online, were just passing on this game. They even say the season pass adoption rate was fairly high on the opening week. Then they also talk about their back catalog overperforming Rainbow Six Siege, just Assassin's Creed in general, and then the Crew too. Now, if we move further down the report, they do talk about 2024, or really just the closeout of their current fiscal year. That will end March 31st, 2024. And they talk about kind of this mystery game, and people are connecting the dots and they have an idea as to what this could be. Say the company can therefore confirm its announced guidance of strong top-line growth and non-IFRS operating income of approximately $400 million without releasing the other large game it had initially planned to launch during the last quarter of the current fiscal year. The company has decided to launch this other large game in fiscal year 2024 to 25 so as to maximize its value creation. Many people figure that's Star Wars Outlaws, so there you go. I guess They may have been trying to get that game out by March 2024 at the latest. However, now it appears that they have no problem waiting as far as March 2025 to release it, but I kind of think that's going to be a holiday, maybe a fall 2024 release, and that just means that they have more time to polish and work on the game. As we know, open world games tend to launch with a lot of bugs, so maybe they'll just have more time to work on it here. The other game is Skull and Bones, which I feel like was supposed to have launched this holiday or like this calendar year, fourth quarter, but it looks like they are going to release it. They still say release it Q4 of their current fiscal year, which means it'll be out latest March 31st, 2024, which brings us to the fun game, the fun question we can play then in 2024. What comes out first, Metroid Prime 4 or Skull and Bones? And it sounds weird, but think about it. They were both revealed in 2017. Skull and Bones has continued to get publicly delayed over and over and over again. It's been rebooted, so it kind of lines up with what's happened with Metroid Prime 4. And I do think both of these games are coming out in 2024, and Skull and Bones could certainly still get pushed into the following fiscal year once again. And I say that because they've already done it over and over again, so they have no problem, I'm sure, just pushing another couple of months. So that's the big question now that we'll end with. What do you think comes out first, Metroid Prime 4 or Skull and Bones? Because at this point, I think it's anyone's guess. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, do you buy a physical Switch game if a download is required to play? Okay, 69% say no. Good job. 31% say yes. I'm definitely on the side of no. It just seems strange. It's almost like, although not quite, it's almost like when you get a download code in a box, although I guess in this case, you technically have the cartridge that will allow you to download it, so you can trade in or sell your cartridge if you want, and it will then allow that person to also access that data, whereas a download code is a one-time use thing. But when I saw that disc for Call of Duty where it was 70 megabytes or something as a launcher on the disc, it was kind of like, why? Like, what's the point of this? But I guess that's really all it is, oh, it's technically an access key on a disc that you can then pass around or put up on your shelf with the box art. So I hope Nintendo gets that worked out, because if not, we're going to see quite a few of those blue boxes, I feel like, in the next couple of years. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Gaming, saying, I think needing an online check for the PS5 drive is really dumb, but I'm more so wondering about the model that comes with the PS5 or the disc drive outright, and if that requires an internet connection, because if it does, I think I might be safer maybe just buying a cheaper, older PS5 disc model or waiting for a future eventual PS5 revision. So I would assume that the system that already comes with it pre-installed from the factory won't need any kind of online check-in for the disk drive, because it's already been paired or married to the motherboard at the factory level. And that's all you're doing when you sign in and have that online check, is you have Sony's server authenticate and then marry your motherboard and the drive board together. The thing that's interesting to me, though, is it's, of course, brought up as a one-time thing, so it's not really a big deal for most people. But it is kind of that slippery slope mentality to where just in 2013, 10 years ago actually, everyone was pushing back heavily at Microsoft for them trying to go to this point of check-in and a lot of reliance on online connection. And now it's generally accepted that, oh yeah, I probably have to be online to play a lot of these games. I mean, on the PC side, it's who gets physical games now anyway. But even on the console side, we keep going further and further towards that all digital future, that cliff that throws you into it at this point. So that's kind of the way I would look at this, as, yeah, okay, maybe it's just a one-time check-in for your disk drive now, but who knows, maybe 5-6 years from now when the next generation starts, you just always got to be online to play your games, even if they're single player. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's Microsoft and their reorganization internally right now. Do you think they're setting themselves up to hit that one big game per quarter, and maybe even for some other acquisitions? And then also, what about Super Mario Bros. Wonder exploding out of the gate in Japan as the fastest selling Mario game? How much do you think this thing can realistically sell in its lifetime? And then what about Skull and Bones versus Metroid Prime 4? Which one comes out first? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.